Hola, amigos. Soy Chris, and today I'm just gonna ramble for a minute about a science fiction idea that I've had for ages and has popped back into my head recently. In case you're wondering why I've got these big raccoon eyes, is because I've been having trouble sleeping recently. This is something that happens more often than you might think. Um, if you ever seen any of my older videos, I look like this. It's for the exact same reason. Anyway, so I've been thinking about trying to make some kind of a sci-fi movie or series or book or something, and I've got this sort of idea in my head of something that is kind of in the future but not terribly far off, where there was this big war between humans and some other big species, and maybe it happened at some point after humanity had expanded a bit of an empire, maybe even where some third alien civilization or whatever, so some random alien civilization, one of their ships or satellites or something crashed on Earth, and the scientists got a hold of it and used it to make all kinds of advanced technology, including some mildly warp capable stuff, like some stuff that was able to go just slightly faster than the speed of light. Something like that. Maybe more even, maybe double the speed of light or something, but nothing like ridiculous Star Trek, Star Wars levels of fast. Um, Something that's at least mildly plausible. Uh, And so basically, just humanity just found a bunch of these, really had been hyper advanced civilizations for a really long time, and so had grown soft as a result of their prosperity. Whereas humanity, it's like, oh, you think humanity is soft now? Imagine if technology and everything continued in this relatively peaceful course for 10,000 years. And so take current humans who are still somewhat aggressive and if anything, we're just repressed now and want to take our aggression out. Now imagine if we had a bunch of targets to take all of our aggression out on. We can even go, oh, they're not even human, they're aliens. So it's acceptable to be cruel and unusual. And so that could be a thing, but imagine if we met some other species that had a very similar warrior mentality. And there was a giant war. Or maybe humanity doesn't even have to necessarily be all that cruel. Maybe, humanity, the Star Trek thing of we get invited into the great thing of the universe, but from something outside of whatever intergalactic. I don't think it would be a federation. I don't want to be overly I think more likely it'd be a trade related thing, oh, maybe the Earth would unite. Probably not even that. It would probably just, be less divided. There'd be 3 or 4 massive super states, which would probably control the Earth. But then, I think the future is more business oriented, and that's probably how other advanced species will do all their things, is on business, because capitalism's pretty much the most efficient way of managing things that we have figured out. And other species are probably at least vaguely similar to us, at least psychologically. Because our brains is the main reason why humans got to where we are. That and our hands. Everything else, other than maybe eyes and ears, is kind of unnecessary. Imagine a squid, but more intelligent and with a longer lifespan, and that there could potentially do many of the things which humans have done. And so there. Anyway, but maybe humanity just is, just through the power of economics and capitalism, just gets into this big trade whatever stuff of the galaxy, and and maybe even it's like we can make kind of a joke of like, oh, everyone in the galaxy is all it's all this primitive Earth culture business. It's the rave all across the galaxy. Like, kind of make fun of how like Western, more like advanced societies are obsessed with the trinkets of various more primitive cultures. Like all the tacky little faux Aboriginal art that you can buy at a lot of Australian gift shops and stuff like that. Or if you've been to any large zoo in America, you'll see a lot of tacky faux primitive stuff from across the world and its many civilizations, including generic African stuff. Because Western hubris knows no bounds, and I imagine human hubris will also know no bounds once we are in space. Well, humanoid hubris? I don't know. You know what I mean. Intelligent hubris. That's the word to go with. Anyway, but basically, but humans would be like primitive enough by the time that we wind up in the greater galactic market or whatever, that we I don't know, maybe there's more of us because we reproduce more or something. I don't know, but for some reason humans are the most numerous, whatever. I don't know why. Maybe it's the thing like before with the war thing where we conquered a small empire, and so all that remains of the species that used to inhabit those areas is local merchants, and basically, maybe that's it. I don't know. Help, please. I need it desperately. Anyway, but the idea is that after this war thing or whatever, of after the a long time of humanity being peaceful in space, there's a big war thing with some very violent culture, or in other words, very similar to our own, because humans are a lot more violent than we'd like to admit. Anyway, and then there was a giant war. I realize I'm getting kind of redundant at this point, but after the war, there's just a bunch of veterans, and the idea is that during the main continuity of the actual story, all of the main characters are people who were involved in this war thing. And maybe there's even just whatever, and we can invent all kinds of interesting culture stuff with the alien culture. And I was thinking that there'd be this ship, and maybe it's a scavenger ship, maybe they're I don't know what they are, but there'd be this ship that does spaceship things. Needs to be for a practical reason, because I'm very much into having believable science fiction. And the main characters would be it'd be the captain, and it'd just be Captain Jacob or whatever, Captain what's a good name for a captain, kind of not a very young guy, but not an old guy, a sort of maybe a guy in his late 20s, early 30s, he's oh yeah, I enlisted at the very end of the war, or I got drafted right as we were getting desperate, and whatever. So it's he saw the very last years of the war, but they were also kind of the worst. So he has roughly the same amount of trauma as the older veterans, because let's say this was a 20-year long war or something, just because in space everything gets bigger, including wars probably. So basically, yeah. And so then he can have his buddy, who's his old war buddy, and it's old Billy Bones or whatever. That is this guy who was horrifically scarred, and maybe even was a genetic experiment, and he's very grumpy compared to the other guy, because he has even more trauma and he's even less good dealing with it, because maybe Captain Jack or whatever, is very, very good at he's sort of he's not completely healed, but he is kind of healed, because that's not where his character growth comes from. His character growth would come from something else. But the character growth of Billy Bones, who I was thinking would be the other main character, would come from him, like learning to, like, I don't know, maybe move on and stop being so obsessed with revenge, because maybe there was some rival on the, like, alien side or whatever, that, like, they had met and fought a bunch of times but never killed each other, but, like, maybe this whatever rival was, like, the reason why he got so horribly scarred or whatever. Like, he caused the accident that caused him to lose his right arm and most of his face, or something like that. Um, and maybe there was this big government program of, like, experimenting with new medical technology and all these veterans, all these wounded veterans that they had as a result of the war, and maybe Billy Bones was one of these. And so, like, instead of having a normal, like, cyber prosthetic, he would have, like, some kind of weird goopy organic thing that is useful if somewhat unreliable, and, like, practical but only barely. So, like, maybe there'd even be stuff where, like, he wouldn't have PTSD, but, like, his arm would. And so, like, maybe kind of like Dr. Lovejoy from that movie with the cowboy who rides the bomb at the end and the world is destroyed. There's a classic movie reference for y'all. Anyhow, that's kind of all I got. And, like, maybe, you know what, maybe Billy Bones' healing comes from, like, maybe there's some young orphan kid that the crew picks up at some point, or some runaway from home or whatever, and Billy Bones is, like, gets very connected to the boy and, like, sort of becomes a father figure, because Billy Bones was very similar in his childhood. Maybe the reason why Billy Bones joined the Space Marines or whatever back, during or before the war, was because he was, like, he was broke and his family didn't have any money, and he had to do something or else they would starve or something sad like that. Or maybe it's that he was an orphan and, like, his parents were killed in, like, a mugging or something and he had nowhere to go. And so, like, he just wound up in, like, government care for ages until he didn't know what to do except for with all this weird strict regiment stuff. So he just joined the military because he was sort of a shoo-in or something. I don't know. Help me, please, friends. And I was thinking there could be some other characters, like a girl character, because there always has to be one of those, especially in the modern age, where if you just have, like, 5 guys on a ship, it's assumed that they're gay, which I don't want, because none of them are. Because I'm not gay, and I don't know how to write gay characters, and also it's kind of icky. I don't want anything icky. I'm mostly joking, but kind of not, so please don't tell YouTube that I'm homophobic, okay? Anyway, that is everything. It is getting late. I should probably go to bed. I hope that I was coherent enough for you to get some inspiration from this video. Goodbye, mi amigos, or adios, mi amigos, and see you next time.